The world is ending. It has been 13 hours now since the assault on Earth began. Officials have been relatively clear about the damage done across the world, but have refused to comment on the mysterious spaceship hovering in the outer atmosphere. We know that following the ship's laser attack, ocean levels around the world rose significantly. Many areas and lower elevations have been completely flooded, with many heavily populated cities permanently lost. The total number of casualties worldwide is unknown at this point. What we do know, however, is that the previous global coalition formed against the Mesopotamians has been halted at this time. The Assembly of Nations has demanded that the members of the Planetary Defensive Treaty Organization prioritize this new extraterrestrial threat over the highly debated and supposed violation of the Mesopotamia Accord in the name of saving humanity. Contact has yet to be made with the beings operating the alien craft that attacked our planet. Nonetheless, the militaries of the world stand united in protecting our planet, Earth. Your planet? Greetings, humans that occupy Earth. We apologize sincerely for the temporary devastation we have brought about to your planet. We were unsure of the effects our land restoration project would have on sea levels, but it appears we have completely failed. I offer my strongest of condolences while pledging aid in making this right. Now then, I'm sure you are all startled by our sudden appearance and have many questions. We will do our best to answer them. You may notice similarities between my appearance and your own. That is because we are of the same species. We are human, just like you. The main differences, however, derive from millennia of evolution. We lack many features that you historic humans have while simultaneously being improved in many areas. We may have slightly smaller brains, but we make up for these losses in our great intelligence and improved physique. Now you may be curious about how an evolved human race exists. For that, we ask that you turn to your governments for answers. Our early scouting indicates that your world's governments did not notify the general population of our existence, despite knowing very well we would return to Earth. We find that very troubling. We are from the past, yet also from the future. We call ourselves the Alternites. Thousands of years ago, we inhabited the very Earth you stand on, but we were forced to the stars after a world-ending event wiped out most of humanity. It appears that in our absence, humanity has re-emerged almost identically to us before fleeing our home. We are willing to share even more information should you allow us to safely enter your planet. Our mothership is currently hovering in the upper atmosphere of Earth. We would like to land peacefully and without risk of being destroyed. We know that the militaries of your world are armed and waiting, and to that I say we come in peace. Lower your arms and welcome us, and we will show no harm. After all, we have already prepared for the occasion. We have risen the mighty ancient continents of the world in wake of our return. The legendary Atlantis, resurfaced from the depths of the very Atlantic Ocean, the European empires voyaged to discover the Americas. The lost Doggerland, risen from the North Sea once dominated by the fearsome Nordic Vikings. Zealandia, the forgotten continent hidden in the coastal waters of the once existing nation of New Zealand. Mauritia, an ancient continent that predates even our humanity, lying under the waters of the Indian Ocean where courageous traders once utilized monsoons to sail to various trade destinations across the ocean. These continents have arisen for our return. We do not seek to take your land nor to erase you, but to share the earth with our descendants. The choice is yours. So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 96 of the series, and if you guys haven't seen the previous episode yet, make sure to go watch it before seeing this one. But what we saw in that last episode was one of the most world-changing events in the series so far, definitely the most world-changing event in the series. Additionally, make sure you've watched all of the other series on the channel. That's Alternate Future Season 1 and Alternate Future Season 2. If you don't want to watch those entire series, I completely understand that, so for that I would say just watch the ending of Alternate Future Season 1, the recap of Alternate Future Season 2, and then the ending of Alternate Future Season 2. After that, you guys are pretty much all caught up. But basically, at this very point in time,
Alternate Future Season 1 has officially returned to Earth. And as you saw in the cinematic, they've resurrected 4 main areas of land: Atlantis, Doggerland, Marisha, and Zealandia. And as you also saw in the cinematic, the Alternites, which is what they call themselves, aren't here to conquer the world or anything. They're simply here to re-inhabit it in the new lands that they have risen from the ocean. These 3 continents and also Doggerland are going to be inhabited by the Alternites if the WICSO world allows it. Before we get into that though, let's recap just a little bit. The WICSO world for many thousands of years was separated from the rest of the universe via a barrier that was created by 2 Swiss scientists at the end of Alternate Future Season 2. This barrier, once again, just completely hid the solar system from the rest of the universe, which is where the Alternites, or the people from Alternate Future Season 1, existed. So they didn't know Earth was there, they didn't know the rest of the solar system was there, they just assumed that it had been wiped out after the events of Season 1. A few episodes ago, that barrier was completely dissolved, and that was signaled by the meteor that fell and hit the Mesopotamian region over here. Of course, now most of the world has flooded due to these new continents. The Americas got hit very hard, as well as some parts of Europe. The areas surrounding the Indian Ocean also got hit hard, and even a lot of islands were submerged. But yeah, that barrier was completely destroyed. It just simply dissolved over time, and this was something that was mentioned in the Singularity Testament, which is once again that mysterious prophecy that was found at the bottom of the ocean in the Indian Ocean. That prophecy was left by the Swiss scientists, the same people who created the barrier that separated the solar system from the rest of the universe. Those Swiss scientists knew that eventually the barrier would dissolve, and they also knew that at around the same time, there was a meteor that would fall and wipe out a portion of Mesopotamia. So they left that in the prophecy. That's how they let the WICSO world know that the barrier was gone. Simply, the meteor has fallen, and therefore the barrier is gone. The Alternites eventually discovered this and made their way to Earth to find that it was actually still inhabited by humans, just not the same ones that were there when the whole world was destroyed. These were their descendants, in a way. It's important to note that the Alternites also view Earth as a godlike thing. Remember, in Season 1, it was almost completely wiped out, and they fled to the stars. They look back on Earth as this kind of divine figure, this almost like God. God has now all of a sudden returned to them, so they made their way back to the planet. The Alternites look to just simply re-inhabit the Earth. It's where they originated from, and it would just simply make sense for them to come back to their home, while simultaneously they want to maintain all of their extraterrestrial claims that lie outside of the solar system in other galactic areas. So their main priority isn't inhabiting Earth, it's instead just having a base on Earth, and thus we see the resurrection of these 4 continents, well, 3 continents in Doggerland. And once again, they come in peace. They don't seek war or annihilation. So with that little bit of lore dump in, let's get back to the present, where the WICSO world is deciding what to do. Almost every single person in the world has received the message from the Alternate leader. They understand that they don't want war, they simply just want to re-inhabit these continents that they've resurrected. They know that the Alternites feel bad about what they've done in flooding a lot of the world. They know that hundreds of thousands, if not maybe even millions of people have been affected by these floods, or definitely millions. Casualty-wise, I don't know if it's that high, but it definitely could be. So the Alternates acknowledge that there was a lot of damage that they did in resurrecting these continents, and they're offering to help the WICSO world rebuild itself in a way, just as long as they welcome the Alternites back to Earth. So the WICSO world now realizes that the teachings of the Singularity Testament are more likely than not true. They predicted that the barrier would be broken. They predicted that this alien species would come back to try to take over the Earth. Except they don't really appear to be wanting to take over the Earth. They just kind of want to inhabit it in some specific areas they've risen. The Testament doesn't speak of that, so maybe the Testament isn't 100% accurate. And on top of that, the world is in pretty much full-on chaos. Just imagine in real life if an alien species came down and just, made 4 continents come out of nowhere. And on top of that, you have all of these flooded areas across the world map. Millions of people are displaced. It is very hectic on Earth right now. And every single country and every single leader in the world is completely overwhelmed. On top of this, each and every leader knows that they are at an extreme disadvantage towards the Alternites. They know that if they try to fight back, they would likely be annihilated. These guys just came out of nowhere and pulled these pieces of land out of the ocean. What makes people think that they can fight back and successfully win? This is not going to end well if they fight back. So with that in mind, the assembly will meet and convene, and a few leaders will give their thoughts. The Alternites are, without a doubt, a grave threat to our planet. Technologically, however, we lack the abilities to protect ourselves. For the sake of our existence, we welcome humanity home.
The current circumstances have completely changed. To our people, I apologize for keeping this reality hidden. We were unsure of its validity. Now, though, we believe coexistence is the safest path forward.
For now, we will comply with the Assembly of Nations and lay down our arms. Greece, however, will not fail to remember the breaching of international law by our neighbours.
Humanity must adapt and evolve as time goes on. That is how we exist as a species. This situation, however, has brought about extreme uncertainty. I cautiously welcome humanity home, while expecting full cooperation.
And in a very, very narrow vote, the Assembly of Nations will decide to lie down their arms and allow for the Alternites to inhabit these pieces of land. This was by no means an easy decision. The circumstances of this situation are too mysterious, and honestly, it's just a matter of what's the best path for humanity forward, because we're faced with either possible coexistence or complete annihilation. If we fight back against these aliens, we are probably going to get wiped off the map and they'll just take the whole Earth. So the WICSO world will respond to the Alternites, and in that response, they will allow them to land on Earth. So a few ships come out from the mothership that we saw in the cinematic, and each continent gets a few ships. And as time progresses, more and more Alternites will start to inhabit these lands. They will begin to settle, they will begin to build, and soon enough, they will start to have a full-on civilization in each of these pieces of land. Not just yet though, over time. For now though, in their declaration to the Alternites, the WICSO world also sets out a few specific conditions, one of which is that the Alternites are required to remain on these pieces of land. Under no circumstances are they allowed to leave other than political meetings. And those political meetings will be determined by the people of the WICSO world. So once again, under no circumstances are the Alternites allowed to leave these new continents and Doggerland. By doing so, they violate the treaty, and well, not like there's any real solid backing towards that. If they violate that, then I'm not too sure what the WICSO world would do, because declaring war on these aliens once again would probably result in annihilation. But still, the Alternites will agree to that condition. The second condition is to help rebuild, which the Alternites already said that they would do. But the third condition is a very tricky one, in which the WICSO world demands that the Alternites share all of their technology with this world. It is a very big ask. You want these aliens who are from Earth, but thousands of years in developing on their own, to just share their technology with the WICSO world. It could be very risky for the Alternites to do that. However, surprisingly enough, the Alternites will agree, and they begin to share technology with the rest of the WICSO world. Technology that will go ahead and move the WICSO world centuries ahead in progression. Once again, this will occur over a few years, not all at once. But now though, with all that said and done, and with the Alternites starting to inhabit these continents, let's get back into the events of the video. And the world is totally divided. Now, right before the Alternites invaded, there was a whole World War VI thing going on, possibly. It was never formally declared, but it did in fact form. But with the Alternites back, the Assembly kind of abandoned the coalition and it completely fell apart. The will to participate in this thing is now all of a sudden gone with the return of the Alternites. And a few countries are very mad about that, like specifically Greece. But overall, the countries agree that there are bigger issues at hand, and fighting World War VI right now would be extremely inappropriate. And the Assembly of Nations will slowly but surely begin to crumble. Not because of the failure to act on the Mesopotamia Accord, but because of the chaos brought about on the world. Once again, it is just completely chaos everywhere. Mass hysteria, anarchy in a few countries. It is just completely crumbling. The international order at this point has collapsed. The only ever time in history the Assembly came close to crumbling was first of all with World War V, and second of all with the possible World War VI. That has tumbled into a full-on collapse now. Countries are beginning to act on their own. The coalitions will both completely collapse, and with it goes a majority of the Assembly. But most notably, the countries that decide to leave it are mostly Unitarian. The first to go is actually Mesopotamia Unitaria. Followed by this is Canadian Unitaria, Iberian Unitaria, African Unitaria, Indonesian Unitaria, and Japanese Unitaria. Once again, the Unitarian countries are the first to declare themselves no longer members of the Assembly, and there is no punishment for leaving the Assembly. There is no requirement to remain in the Assembly. It's just that as countries joined the Assembly over time, they saw improvements within their own country and saw no need to leave. But now with mass hysteria, the Unitarians are taking a new lead. They view the Assembly as weak within their response to the alternates, and they want a very solidified and very concrete example and new order, one of which is able to work with the Alternites, but one of which is capable of defending itself against those said Alternites, something that the Assembly was unable to accomplish within the first couple of weeks of the return. Many countries are going to follow the Unitarians out of the Assembly as well. Notably, we see other former Old Imperial countries leave as well. Both Norway and Finland leave, as well as Poland, the Farmers' Republic, and Estonia. Rome, Sicily, and Germany will all leave. Over in the Oceanic region, we see Australia leave, as well as both the Philippines and Vietnam. Bangladesh and Dark Blue China will exit, as will the Communist and Manchuria. The Green Team leaves. Various Central African countries will leave. Surprisingly, all of South America will remain, while over in North America, we only see America leave. And in place of the Assembly of Nations, a new international order will be formed by the Unitarian countries, but also joined by a few other countries, known as the New World Order. Simply put, it is a rival organization to the Assembly. It functions exactly the same way, but they do business just a little bit more differently, a lot more solidified, and a lot more united. The decisions made by this new order will usually be completely unanimous, and once again, a lot of countries join it. So we have the Farmers' Republic, Rome, Norway, all of the Unitarian countries join it. Vietnam joins it, as well as the Communist country. But a lot of the nations that left the Assembly simply did not join either international order, and that could be for various reasons. And as time goes on, those reasons start to increase to mostly being due to anarchy. Most of the people in the world at this point have a sense of impending doom. They feel as if the world is going to end very soon, if it's not already ending. This alien species coming down, pulling these continents out of the ocean, re-inhabiting them, saying that they're from the past, but also technically very futuristic. It's too much for the human mind to really comprehend. And the best way I can try to give you this feeling is just to imagine this happening in real life. It would be very chaotic. The first country to fall into complete anarchy is the Lime country over here in South America. The government will completely collapse, and a lot of factions will begin to form, dozens and dozens of factions led by different groups in society. As time goes on, those factions and militias will begin to take one another over and will begin to solidify, but for now, this nation ceases to exist completely, and the Assembly of Nations will make the decision to not intervene within these countries, which is going to make a lot of countries question that decision, because why shouldn't we help out these other former Assembly nations? The next nation to fall into complete anarchy is the Dark Green country over here in North America. Like the South American one, their government will completely collapse and a bunch of factions will form. The next country after that is the Dark Red country over here in Europe, the Anatolian country over here in Asia, the Green Team down here in Africa, Bangladesh, the Yellow Papa country, Sudan, the Green country in South America, and finally, the nation of Caribbean. So many countries will fall into complete anarchism, the governments collapse, and it's just insane, it's crazy all over the world. A lot of countries are close to anarchism, but are able to maintain their hold, and usually what we see is countries that are either recently formed or countries that are just extremely weak that fall into anarchism. Notably, we see Caribbean fall into anarchism due to the fact that the creation of Atlantis wiped out a good portion of that country. Hundreds of their islands, well not hundreds, but a lot of their islands are now underwater. A lot of the countries that used to be down here in real life, or the islands down here that Caribbean had, are now completely gone. On top of Cuba being heavily impacted, the Dominican Republic area being impacted, basically it just destroyed the country and the government collapsed, and once again we saw anarchism emerge. But now we head over to Mesopotamia, where we actually have more unification taking place. Now, the Mesopotamians are no longer in the Assembly of Nations, they're now in their own order, which is once again known as the New World Order. So the Mesopotamia Accord is meaningless now, and the Assembly cannot take action on the Mesopotamians anymore because they no longer technically agree to that very Mesopotamia Accord. Some may theorize that the Unitarians originally planned to create this New World Order despite the Alternate invasion. It's just that now that they're here and now that the world is in complete chaos, the New World Order was a lot easier to create and there would not be as much backlash. Also, it gives them perfect justification for leaving the Assembly, which before would have been very taboo and they would have been looked down on not only by the rest of the world, but even their own citizens. So the Alternate invasion technically benefited Mesopotamia, other than all the land they lost from the water down here. But the country that is joining in on Mesopotamian Unitaria is the Teal country up here in the Anatolian Peninsula. Previously, the whole United Mesopotamia Old Empire idea was very unpopular in this region. However, after a few wars and very close relations with the rest of Mesopotamia, the people here have kind of reignited the flame and are now reevaluating and, well, since have reevaluated and decided that unification would be the best for them, especially now in these troubling times the more unified people are, the stronger the country is, and the better of chance of repelling these aliens they have if needed. So the Mesopotamian Unitarians expand once more, and the New World Order gains even more strength. Now, the relations between the Assembly and the New World Order are not good at all. The Assembly sees this New World Order thing as the kind of like the taboo thing. Once again, before the whole Ultranite invasion, that would have been extremely taboo. It still is, but now it's just a slightly more understandable in the wake of this disaster. Still though, they don't really like each other because the Unitarians willingly formed that coalition against the Assembly, or more so in defense of Mesopotamia, which defied the Mesopotamia Accord, and now that a majority of those countries have joined this New World Order, that disapproval is still there. But in response to Mesopotamia's expansion, and something that is very surprising to even the Assembly, we have Greece, the most frustrated country in the world right now due to the lack of action against the Mesopotamians, decide that they want to flex their muscles on Mesopotamia and show that they have not forgotten that they violated the Mesopotamia Accord. And in order to flex their muscles, they're going to be invading the anarchist territory that was once this Anatolian country. Now, for the sake of us actually being able to do this correctly, I'm going to have to go ahead and enable its original color. But Greece, in a show of their military might, will begin to send their military into this anarchist territory. They will take out all of the individual clans that have formed here over time, and they will declare a new Anatolian government, one under Greek control. Now, the major cities, of course, are all still here, and that is what Greece is primarily targeting, since that is where most of the more powerful factions are. But this is a very easy cakewalk for Greece. They just go in, kill any people that are holding guns against them, and they declare themselves the ruler of this land. There's not really much of a war being fought here, as much of just like a removal of anyone that is like disobeying them. Like, you have to imagine, there's no generals, there's no leader of this territory. It's essentially just Greece walking in and taking it, and that's exactly what they do. So they will completely occupy the territory, and once they're done with that, Greece will fully annex it into their country, so they become a lot larger, and this notably will make Mesopotamia very angry, because the people that were here were all Mesopotamian people, or were of Mesopotamian descendants and were once Old Empyrean. Mesopotamia has this sense of unity with all of its people spread out all across the map. There's a lot of Mesopotamians over here in the Sicilian country. There's even a lot of Mesopotamians in Greece. But this aggression on their people here, even though they're very disorganized, isn't something that is very welcomed by Mesopotamia, especially considering they likely had plans of their own within this territory, not as an aggressor, but someone who is there to unite the people under one government once again. It's just that Greece beat them to it, and now Greece is flexing on them. And tensions between these two nations are extremely, extremely high. Out of all tensions in the world, this is where it is the most heated. And to further fuel the fire, Greece will now be forming a military alliance that is specifically made to deter Mesopotamian expansion and to hold it in its place, and maybe even coalition against it in the future. Remember that Greece is like a vengeful spirit here. They're never going to let this down, and they're never going to allow for Mesopotamia to exist. So now we can take a look at their new military alliance. One that is going to be named the Parallelogram Alliance. Welcome back, unfortunately. But that includes them, their longtime ally in the Orange Team, the Gold Team in Africa, the Orange Afghan country, and most notably, India. Some of the most historic Mesopotamian haters have now all combined forces under one military alliance, and they are in some very strategic spots. They are completely threatening the Mesopotamian Unitarian country. You have Greece all the way up here in the north, India, a very strong country, all the way over here in the east. We have to the south the Gold Team, and some countries on the outside are kind of interested in joining this, like the Green Team, for example, although they have a very large Mesopotamian population, therefore they're likely not to stand in the way of Mesopotamia. It would be very unpopular with their people. Even through this divided history, they are still of the same people, just a little bit more mixed thanks to a certain somebody over here. But like Libya, for example, is kind of thinking about joining this military alliance. But yeah, tensions are brewing over in this region, the Middle Eastern region, although once again, there still is a bigger problem at hand here, which was the Ultranites returning. The world is slowly learning how to coexist as the Ultranites begin to build their civilizations within these continents. It's not enough yet to draw in a color, because they're still settling and unpacking resources they brought from, the galaxy and all this stuff. It's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to cover. And honestly, this video might seem like I've had a lot of rambling in it, but it's just so much stuff to talk about and to inform you about. It's kind of hard to all put together in like a flowing state. But I do believe I've gotten the main points across now. And if there's any questions, put them down in the comments below. I might start replying to some of them even. Join the Discord server. I do talk about the lore a lot over there as well. But on the topic of the Ultranites, we're coming over here to Australia, who has been very impacted by this event. Zealandia has reformed, and a lot of their land has been completely engulfed in this area. Now, the Australian government is very curious about the new arrival of the Alternites. They're not necessarily against them in any way, they're not really opposed to them. They are, once again, just kind of curious and also kind of fascinated in a way, learning about this old civilization that is so futuristic that has all of a sudden returned to Earth. But they decide to be one of the first countries to diplomatically meet with an alternate government over here in Zealandia. And in that diplomatic meeting, they broker a very mysterious deal, one of which they don't share with any other country in the world. They keep it to their top officials. But the only thing that we know that comes out of this is the Red Australians receiving a very large portion of land from the Alternites. They are going to double the size of New Zealand over here. And this is a very, very interesting event. No one really thought that the Alternites would be willing to give up any of the land that they've resurrected, but the deal that Australia made with them was apparently good enough to where that they would be willing to give up this land. And Australia will expand across this land, now separating Zealandia into two main areas. We have the north and the south. And not much else is known about this deal, other than the fact that they are going to break one of the conditions, which was that the Alternites were not allowed to leave the land that they resurrected. And the Australians are able to do this due to the fact that they left the Assembly of Nations. They are no longer an AN country. They don't have to comply with any of the laws or any of the conditions that the AN sent for the Alternites. So, this is going to make the AN very angry. The New World Order also doesn't really like the Alternates leaving their land, but they're a little bit more understanding of Australia, although very, very skeptical because, what exactly happened here? Why were they just given all this land? What did they give up for that? But what we do know now is that there are Alternites in Australia, not to live there, but to explore the land that their ancestors once inhabited millenniums ago. So there's a lot of mystery in this region, but Australia is able to expand. Now moving up north here to Vietnam, where we have a major event happening for this country. They, like many other countries across the world, are experiencing very heavy instability right now, and they aren't necessarily close to anarchy, but they're treading along that line. The government is keeping control. They're using their military to do so, which kind of defies the whole AN thing. They left the AN though, so they don't have to follow that once again. But something that they're unable to do is maintain control over the Malay Island at this point. It used to be a peninsula, but the flood that was created by Mauritius over here went ahead and separated it from the rest of Vietnam. But they've lost control. It's almost complete anarchy down here, not as stable as the north. And Vietnam is simply unable to lend resources to deal with this. They're gonna have to let it go because they can't. They're dealing with all of the more important stuff up here. Like, this area is pretty populated, but it's definitely not as populated as the north. And this area, especially around the capital, is way more important. So Vietnam refuses to do anything about this, and this will kind of break into its own country. While at the same time, a few of the major cities in the south will make the very curious decision to become unitaria and join Indonesian unitaria. This will go ahead and create a few new provinces, but that's unimportant. The areas that decide to break away are these ones. They go ahead and join Indonesian unitaria, so they expand a little bit, but mostly everyone over here is semi-happy now. There's still a ton of instability. This country is struggling immensely. They're not going to join any international organization or anything like that. They're going to try to make this government work at these times of great despair and great hysteria. There are a lot of things happening in the world, and forming a country right now is one of the most difficult things you can do. We'll have to see how this country does over the course of the last few episodes in the series, but for now, that is going to do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. This was, without a doubt, the craziest episode in the series so far. So much happened, and for the first time really ever, we've seen these mass land changes with the resurrection of these 4 large pieces of land. In the next few episodes, we're going to be seeing the end of the series. There's only 4 episodes left, 97, 98, 99, and the big 100, and it's going to be absolute chaos from here on out. If it ever gets too confusing at any point, once again, make sure to join the Discord server. I'm happy to explain any of the lore there, but also it could help you connect the dots if you were to watch Alternate Future Season 1 and 2 in full. If not, I understand you don't have time for that. Just watch the ending of Alternate Future Season 1. That's like the last 2 episodes, as well as the recap of Season 2. It's a shortened version. It's just essentially a recap of the first 9 episodes of that season. And then watch episode 10, the ending. And then, of course, most of you guys have watched all of WICSO at this point, so you're all caught up there. And that might help you piece the lore together, but still, there was probably going to be a few questions. So once again, I'm happy to help answer some of those questions in the Discord server. But yeah, once again, that is going to do it for today's video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're new. Check out the Discord server, check out the channel memberships, check out the limited edition merch, which is going away very soon. In fact, actually, it's almost gone by the time this video is releasing on Sunday. It goes away on the 31st. Get it before it's gone. Trust me, it's going to be gone forever. You'll never get it again. Anyway, once again, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Sir, the rebellion is losing ground extremely quickly. A dozen systems have been lost since our return to Earth. Soon, they will likely come for us here. What should we do?
Shrubly. Tell the rebels to keep fighting for now. Our future may be brighter than we originally thought. Perhaps we can find a way to replicate what those two legends once did.
And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Augusto Mapping, Becky, Vista Maps, Omega the YouTuber, the official GeoMapper on YT, Kingdom of the Asheron, Coda, Shifty Mapping, 2, Not CBB Junior, Augusto, Opie the Boat, Rad is totally my name, Xander Pro 2023, Green France, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Golden Ball Mapping, Australian Geo Guy, Zaylands, DJ Big Goose, Big Mapping, and Hammer Toad 45. Once again, thank you guys.